It wasn't a whisper. It wasn't leaked by some faceless individual using a screen name. It was Mykelti Brown who spoke clearly, emotionally, with no hesitation. And as soon as the words left her mouth, the sister wives' story fell apart. "We never were family to her," Mykelti stated. "She looked at us like we were parasites." This one sentence accomplished what numerous episodes, reunions, and confessions could never do. It made the viewing public pause and confront a difficult question. What was taking place behind closed doors? Viewers had long sensed that something was not right. The tension had always hovered. Flicks of the eye, awkward moments of silence, wording of phrases that left clawing ends. But never before had it been verbalized this clearly, this bluntly. This is what Mykelti chose to say, unfussy with her words, dropping the burden she had clearly borne for a long time. In order to comprehend why her words were so painful to hear, you must understand who Mykelti is in the Brown family dynamic. She is not the one who speaks the loudest. She is not the one who makes the drama. She is always the middle child who is trying to figure out who she is, where she belongs, and for her voice to be heard without causing commotion. Therefore, it was not drama that was heard. It was truth. Robyn Brown had long been depicted as the emotional center of the family, the sensitive wife who only wanted everyone together, at peace and in love. She cried on camera. She talked about wanting everyone to be together. She seemed to believe that she was misunderstood, that she was being held accountable for things that she never meant to do. Some of her fans seemed to believe her. "Because of the security situation in Darfur, my mother is still." It wasn't about verbal sparring or active antagonism, she says. It was something far more destructive, emotional alienation. Robyn never shouted. She never disowned the older children. She merely conveyed, through her behaviors, that they were not, in truth, hers. Mykelti went on to say that since the day Robyn came into their family's life, there had always been a line. On one side of the line were Robyn and her children. On the other side of the line were everyone else. This line never went away. It just got thicker with each passing year. It was like they were forcing the family gatherings. Talking with each other seemed superficial. It was like they were always tiptoeing so as not to offend Robyn or earn their place in the group. Mykelti related that it was like they were always intruding in a room that they were never invited into. That is where the word parasites came from. It wasn't that Robyn had never uttered that word herself, of course, but that's what Mykelti felt like they were viewed as. Like they were taking up time, energy, attention, and resources that Robyn thought were hers and her children's. Like they were a burden, not a gift. And the worst of it wasn't Robyn herself, it was who stood with her. Kody. Mykelti could feel that her pain was not purely related to Robyn's actions. It's about Kody's silence, Kody's failure to speak out against it, Kody's choosing one home over the other. When Robyn was in need, Kody was there for her. When other children were in need of reassurance, he distanced himself. This imbalance did not occur overnight. It occurred slowly. Missed moments, canceled plans, shifting rules. Small things that accumulated until the children realized they were no longer at the center of their father's universe. It was like seeing Kody evolve into a more, if you're not with me, you're against me type of guy, who is more inflexible and less willing to tolerate any kind of dissent in regards to allowing Robyn into the family, Mykelti shared. It was like a test of loyalty, and if you were judged unworthy, you were no longer important. At least for a child, this type of emotional abandonment is damaging. She wasn't trying to stir up hatred of Robyn among her fans. She wasn't trying to retell history. She was just relating what happened to her, the way it happened, the way it felt, the way it lingered with her well after the cameras were turned off. That is the reason why her statements left the Sister Wives fans so shocked. It was not reality TV drama, as it happened in this. This was a woman who was finally expressing the pain that she had experienced as a child, who had ignored it for so many years. This is not about placing blame. This is session 1 of this story. It is all about the impact. It's about how silence can hurt more than shouting, how favoritism can break families. And then there's the truth that oftentimes doesn't emanate from the voice that is heard the loudest in the room. Sometimes it is the one that waited the longest to speak. It was a chaotic, noisy, and sometimes stressful existence, yet it was also one of shared experience that kept everyone together. These children lived side by side, without being separated into last names or boundaries of feelings. They fought like siblings, made amends like siblings, but more importantly, they knew that they belonged. Mykelti remembers that moment very well. There were shared kitchens, shared couches, and shared traditions. Holidays were not about which house had more importance. Together, they were about togetherness. While Christine, Janelle, Mary struggled with feelings of jealousy and strife, in matters of the children, it was an understanding that all children were of equal importance. That equality of humanity, far from being absolute, was true nonetheless. And then came Robyn, and everything started to fall into place. Initially, the family attempted to embrace her with open arms. The children were told that this was a new and exciting era, that through love, things should be brought together, not driven apart. Mykelti, like many of the other children, wanted to believe that this was true. She wanted to be supportive. She wanted to be a part of this new dynamic that was taking place in her family. But then, almost instantly, something was off. Robyn was not integrating into the family structure. She was building one of her own. Her children's expectations were different. Their rules were different. Their levels of interaction with Kody were different. A hierarchy developed without warning, and the children noticed. Mykelti remembers noticing little things. More emotional support went to Robyn's children. Their needs were talked about more thoughtfully. Their feelings were protected in a way that the other children never sensed from their own childhoods. It was not the attention that Robyn gave to her children that stung. The fact that there was no attempt to reach out to the other children. Robyn rarely made any effort to understand who they were as people, Mykelti says. Their conversations never went deeper. Connecting with each other seemed like an awkward process. It was as if it was always understood that there were boundaries to their relationship that everyone respected but never discussed. Spending time with my family became awkward. But then, gatherings were no longer natural. They became performances. Everyone had to be mindful of the words that left their mouth, their feelings, their even expressions. That warmth that filled the room was replaced with tension. Again, Kody was key. Rather than helping with the transition or preserving group unity, Kody strongly clustered with Robyn's point of view. He characterized any degree of discomfort with it as resistance. If the children were hurt by it, then they were made to feel that they were not open enough. If they questioned the fairness of it, then they were seen as disrespectful. This incident taught the children a valuable lesson that with voice came responsibility. Mykelti says that over the years, the older children just gave up. It became more effective to just shut their mouths instead of being discredited. Emotional needs were pushed aside. Hurting feelings became normal. Being treated equally became a memory. Robyn, either deliberately or unintentionally, found herself being the center of the emotional universe of the family. Her tears counted. It was important that she was. Her comfort was important. The comfort of the other kids, not so much. This brought about emotional separation not only between Robyn and the children, but among the siblings as well. Boundaries were established. Relationships were altered. A situation that seemed like one big family was gradually becoming like separate homes with mandated socialization. Mykelti describes the pain of realizing that the family she had grown up believing in, the concept of plural unity, was fading away. Not for a lack of love, but for selective attention. And the cameras were recording none of it. One group of people was watching the televised appearance of smiles, scripted dialogues, and crafted moments. Children were dealing with feelings that they couldn't articulate. It was a situation where they were growing up with an impression that fairness is conditional, or they could or could not belong. This explains the importance of Mykelti's outlook. She is not rewriting history. She's closing the gaps that were left unrevealed by the series. She is decoding that a family that seemed chaotic, but was together, is becoming more organized, regulated, and emotionally segmented. It is difficult to discuss Session 2 without highlighting that a truth. However, the family did not break apart as a result of one big argument. It failed because connection was replaced with control. By the time the word parasites was used by Mykelti, the damage was already done. That word didn't come from one argument or from one explosive moment. It came after years of quiet nihilization. In Mykelti's case, the feeling grew slowly, almost invisibly. At first, it was easy to explain away. Perhaps Robyn was daunted by this new experience of hers. Maybe blended families were tougher to handle than one had thought. Maybe things would improve with time. But time didn't fix it. Time proved it. Mykelti began noticing how Robyn reacted every time the original kids needed anything: attention, reassurance, or even simple inclusion. It was always tension, always hesitation. Always this feeling that they were a source of stress rather than a wellspring of joy. It wasn't open cruelty. That would have been easier to name. Rather, it was emotional distancing. Robyn didn't really invest in relationships with the older kids, and she sure as heck didn't fight for those bonds like Christine once did or like Janelle tried to. And over time, the message was clear: you are not my responsibility. That is when Mykelti says the feeling of being a parasite really set in. Not because anyone called them that, but because that's how they were treated. Like outsiders who consumed resources without permission. Like burdens instead of blessings. Like people who needed to justify their existence in the family. The more she felt when Kody was constantly taking Robyn's side. Whenever there was tension, Kody didn't ask how the kids felt. He asked how Robyn felt. Whenever people expressed discomfort, he didn't seek balance. He instead sought loyalty. To Mykelti, Robyn wasn't just defending her kids. She was defending her throne, and Kody was enabling it. Family decisions increasingly were based on one thing: what Robyn was comfortable with, where they lived, how they gathered, who was welcome and who wasn't. Slowly, the rest of the family learned that harmony meant not upsetting Robyn. And what if you did? You were pushed further out. Mykelti remembers how, at times, it seemed like the family was divided into convenient and inconvenient. Robyn's children were protected, put first, and emotionally justified. Everyone else needed to show flexibility, grow up faster, and require less. That imbalance wasn't just unfair, it was humiliating. Imagine being a child and realizing your father's time, energy, and affection now came with conditions. That your presence was merely tolerated and not wanted, and that to speak honestly would cost you what little connection you still had. That's the emotional space Mykelti was living in. And so, when she finally spoke out, she didn't choose a soft word. She chose the word that best described the experience of parasites, because that's how it feels to exist in a family when love has limits. The backlash was immediate. It shocked some fans to hear her be so honest. Others called her cruel. But many, in particular longtime viewers, knew the truth underneath. They'd watched this dynamic unfold for years without really knowing it. Suddenly, scenes from old episodes made sense. Awkward silences, false smiles. The way Kody bristled if anyone challenged Robyn. What once seemed like normal family tension now seemed to look emotionally favorable. And the heartbreaking part? Mykelti wasn't alone. Other children started echoing similar sentiments: distance, neglect, and emotional abandonment. Different voice, same pain. Different stories, same pattern. Session 3 is where the illusion completely shatters. This isn't about Robyn being misunderstood. It is not about kids being dramatic. This is about a family structure that eventually stopped valuing all its members as part of the same unit. Mykelti didn't let out a secret. She named a feeling that had lived for years. All too familiar feelings of not being wanted, a feeling of being in the way, a feeling of being tolerated and not loved. And once that feeling was spoken out loud, there was no taking it back. Because sometimes the truth isn't explosive when it's revealed. If Robyn's behavior created the divide, Kody's silence turned it into a fracture. For Mykelti, this was the hardest reality to hear. Not that Robyn felt distant, but that her father allowed it, again and again, without hesitation, without correction. As the tension between them escalated, the children waited for Kody to step in. They expected him to notice the imbalance, to ask questions, to protect the emotional safety of all his kids. Instead, what they saw was a man who became increasingly defensive whenever Robyn was involved. Any concern brought up by the older kids was quickly reframed as disrespect. Any emotional pain was dismissed as drama. Any attempt to discuss and talk things through was shut down. Kody did not want to hear it. Mykelti says conversations stopped being conversations anymore. They turned into tests of loyalty. You were fine if you agreed with Robyn. If you question her role or her influence, then you're difficult, you're ungrateful, and you're divisive. This created an atmosphere in which honesty felt dangerous. They realized their hurt only pushed Kody further away, and so many of them went quiet. They smiled for the cameras, they showed up when expected, and they carried their disappointment alone. Meanwhile, Kody's behavior continued to change. He grew more rigid, more controlling, and less emotionally available. His world contracted to where it almost exclusively orbited around Robyn and her household. Everybody else existed on the periphery, invited in only when it was convenient. Mykelti realized that even when Robyn wasn't present, Kody sprang to her defense in less than a nanosecond. Her feelings were always the issue. Her argument was always the right one. And her discomfort was always a family emergency. The message was clear. Robyn came first. That favoritism didn't just affect the kids, it reordered the entire dynamic of the family. Christine felt it deeply. She watched her children struggle for attention while Kody grew distant and critical. Over time, the emotional neglect became impossible to ignore. Christine wasn't just losing her husband, she was watching her children lose their father. Janelle saw it too, though she hung in longer. "I tried to keep being logical and practical and patient," she says. But even she couldn't deny the pattern. Kody showed up for Robyn in ways he didn't for anyone else. Mary, once the legal wife of Kody, faded out into an emotional isolation where she was present but not seen, included but not valued. And at the center of it all stood Kody, insisting nothing was wrong. That denial became the final breaking point. Mykelti says the most painful part wasn't the arguments. It was the absence of accountability. Kody never acknowledged the hurt, never apologized for the imbalance, never admitted that his choices affected his children. Instead, he blamed everyone else. The wives were disloyal. The kids were too full of themselves. The family was fractured. The people weren't obedient enough. That mindset destroyed trust. So, one by one, the family just stopped trying to fix what Kody refused to see. Christine left, not out of anger, but for her own survival. She put herself and her children above a system not working for them anymore. That decision sent ripples through the entire family. It was both heartbreaking and validating for Mykelti. Heartbreaking because the dream of unity was officially dead. Validating because it confirmed what she'd felt for years, that love alone wasn't enough to hold this family together. Session 4 isn't about one explosive argument or one dramatic exit. It's about what happens when a parent stops listening, when silence replaces leadership, when fairness is replaced with nepotism, when control replaces connection. By that time, the family came to realize the damage caused, it had already become irreparable. When Mykelti finally got the chance to speak her truth, the Brown family was broken. The separations were in place. The distance was real. Their unity, what they had promised, was gone except for some remembered, edited versions. But it did something incredible. It reframed the whole situation. Suddenly, the story was no longer about couples ending their marriages. It was about children who were raised with the realization that they were unwanted. Viewers who had been loyal to sister wives since the series' inception, were now viewing reruns of previous episodes with fresh eyes. Scenes that had appeared awkward before were now painful. Conversations that had seemed confusing before were clear. The dynamic that Mykelti spoke of was always there. It was hidden in plain sight. The favorite, the harmonic imbalance. How some voices were always louder, always protected. It was not rumors that Mykelti shared with the audience, but context. Robyn has insisted for years that she wants unity, but what Mykelti showed is that unity without work is merely a mirage. To say that you want everyone to be together is beside the point if you never chose to meet people at their point of need. And that never happened, Mykelti says. However, Session 5 is not only about placing the blame on Robyn. It's what occurs when a family fails to live with emotional truth. Kody's decisions are no longer distinguishable from the result. To favor the convenience of one family over another is to let resentment build unchecked. To ignore children's opinions instead of hearing them is to make a wound that does not heal with time, but grows harder. Mykelti's truthfulness challenged the audience to face the reality that the disintegration of this family wasn't sudden. Instead, it was systematic. Small decisions made repeatedly for years. Small dismissals that added up. Moments of a conditional love. And the children were aware of every one of them. Now, the Brown family is in pieces. Relationships are superficial, guarded, or non-existent. Holidays are celebrated apart. Conversations become guarded. Trust is tenuous. But in the middle of this loss, there is clarity too. Mykelti speaks not to damage her family's reputation. Mykelti speaks to claim her voice back, to support the younger Mykelti, who was invisible, who is invisible, to state what children in broken homes feel but never get the chance to say. Because her words were not honed. She says, they were not strategic, they were raw, and that is why they cannot be unheard by their fans. Sister Wives, a story that will always be contested. There'll always be those who support Robyn, those who point fingers at Kody, those who mourn what could have been for the family. But one thing's for certain,